Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 549, 549, September the 15th, 2018. Saturday. Welcome to the Saturday morning edition of TowerGate. Let's get to it. Well, as many of you have heard by now, Manafort has reached a plea deal. He is going to plead guilty to conspiracy against the U.S. and also obstruction, essentially lobbying without being registered as a foreign agent. A lot of people are saying that in this court filing, they mention this company B. A lot of people are suggesting that that is the Podesta Group. And there is some information in this from what people have read that suggests that it would be talking about the Podestas. And apparently Tony Podesta was also involved in the same thing, working for Manafort on the same issue, the Ukrainian issue for Mr. Yanukovych, and that he too was not registered as a foreign agent. Now, since that has come out, we've had Podesta's spokesperson, we assume his lawyer, has come out and denied that. But these people are pathological liars. So they're working the political side of the thing. But none of that matters. All that really matters is who Company B really is, and is that actually Podesta's group? And if so, and if what we're reading in the Gateway Pundit story that I was reading or on the Daily Caller, both have the similar story. Excuse me. If that is all true, and what we're learning here is that, of course, Manafort hired the Podesta Group and another group. Now, apparently, Manafort hired the Podesta Group. This would be referred to as this Group B, if in fact that is true. And then the Podestas hired a foreign group to work for them to give them cover, so it wouldn't be exposed. It was actually the Podesta Group that was working alongside Manafort, working with Manafort on this Ukrainian stuff, which would have been working for Mr. Yanukovych, not against, which would be quite humorous because that would be going against the entire establishment, certainly against Podesta, John Podesta, who is of course Tony Podesta's brother, who was the chairman of the Clinton campaign. So things are mighty murky right now. We don't know exactly. These are just accusations people are drawing from reading, I guess, some court documents. We will probably take a little time, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, before this finally spills itself out. And we know, in fact, whether or not this company B or entity B is actually the Podesta Group. And if it is, then we should certainly be seeing indictments coming down against Tony Podesta, because he was essentially working for Manafort, and in fact taking it one step farther by cloaking what he was doing by using a third party, this European group. Now, a lot of people are suggesting that Manafort's just, cutting his losses. He can drag this thing out and fight it, but it's going to cost him millions and millions of dollars. There's a lot of people suggesting that Manafort will be pardoned by Trump, and I think that there's a fair chance that that will happen, but I don't think it will happen immediately afterwards. I think that the pardon will come after there's enough revelations from the Spygate criminal conspiracy, as that unravels and we get deep enough into the unraveling of that, and we're getting very close to it now, that at some point, and when it becomes obvious to the majority of people in the country exactly what really did happen in the 2016 election and who did participate in a criminal conspiracy, then the waters will be calm enough for Trump to go ahead and issue that pardon. So it's likely, though, that in the time that it takes for Manafort to go through the plea process, go through the court hearings, go through the sentencing and all that sort of thing, we'll be maybe 5, 6, 7 months down the road, by which time we may be in the situation at that point where enough of the evidence of Spygate, the real criminal conspiracy, will be deep enough into that it will be well enough known and accepted by enough people what exactly did happen, and thereby Trump will then be okay pardoning Manafort and Flynn or anyone else, Papadopoulos, anyone else, commute their sentences, pardon him, whatever, because it will all have been proven to have been fruit of the poisonous tree. All of this would have started with a criminal plot by the deep state against the president, and that's how Manafort, Page, Flynn, and Papadopoulos all got caught up in this. So I think that that's kind of where the bets are being hedged right now on this particular issue. I just think it's too soon right now to know for sure because it's just a lot of speculation. But probably the most interesting point of it is, who is this company B that they reference in this in these documents? And if in fact it is Tony Podesta's group, then we should certainly see indictments against Tony Podesta coming down, regardless of what his spokesperson says. He's doing what any spokesperson says. He comes out and lies for his client. That's why he's there. But you know, Tony Podesta closed up shop right after the Manafort investigation was made public. And he has been very, very quiet. And so that tells me that Tony Podesta must know that he somehow could be implicated and he has some sort of legal jeopardy here. Otherwise, he wouldn't have closed up shop and gone underground. But he's clearly trying to put himself in a position to weather some kind of a storm. And we'll have to find out what that is as we move forward. But that's one of the major stories that hit Friday. We also have Secretary Pompeo, who, in addition to the State Department spokesman who issued their warning to former Secretary of State John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, we now have Pompeo himself coming out and ripping John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, for attempting to undermine U.S. policy toward Iran. Keep in mind, Kerry is not registered as a foreign agent. Now, it was funny because Trump came out and sent out that tweet saying the exact same thing, that, hey, John Kerry is meddling in U.S. foreign policy, where he shouldn't be. And the last time I checked, according to Trump, he is not registered as a foreign agent. So here you have Trump pointing out that John Kerry is not registered as a foreign agent, and he's conducting these types of things. He is just as guilty as Manafort or Podesta or anyone else. I mean, there's lots of these lobbyists that do this type of thing, and they don't follow this procedure to register as a foreign agent. Lots of lobbyists doing this on both sides, Republican and Democrat. But they chose to use this to get Manafort, just like they used silly Sally Yates used the Logan Act to justify what she did to Michael Flynn. Although it should be duly noted that Flynn wasn't charged with violations of the Logan Act. He was charged with lying to the FBI. But it was if you go back to the hearings with Sally Yates, you'll see that she talks about the Logan Act. That was the reason that they used to get into Michael Flynn. And so it's not unusual to see them use things like this to get an investigation started. But when it all is said and done, a lot of times we see, just like with Mr. Wolf, he too is being charged with lying to the FBI. He's not being charged with releasing classified information, which is, of course, the Carter Page FISA warrant that he gave to that reporter, Watkins, Emily or something Watkins. So yes, Pompeo calling out John F. Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, for his criminal acts in undermining U.S. policy with Iran. And, of course, as Trump has tweeted out, last time he checked, John Kerry is not registered as a foreign agent, and therefore he should be arrested. Not just silenced or not just told to back down. They should seriously look into charging him. Bob Woodward of Watergate fame has now gone on both CNN and The View and has told both of them that he found no Trump-Russia collusion. And he said he looked for it hard. I'm sure he did. Of course, he knew there was no Trump-Russia collusion from the very beginning. What's Woodward trying to do? He's trying to cover his butt and trying to recover a little bit of his reputation, as it's been destroyed from his stupid book full of lies and his playing along with the Trump-Russia collusion thing for a very, very long time now. But he and his friends now realize that the Trump-Russia collusion thing was a hoax. And so now they're going to have to backpedal. They're going to have to try to shift their focus. They're going to have to try to change their narrative, because now it's CYA time for them. And they also understand that it comes down to the 2018 midterms. And they know in the media, just as well as the Democrats know, just as well as all the guilty parties know who participated in the criminal conspiracy, they know that if the Dems don't take back the House in the midterms, if the Republicans hold on, that it's going to be curtains for all of them. And that's when you're going to see this entire shift. You're probably going to see these people now starting to cover the actual Spygate story. But they'll be a day late and a dollar short. And keep in mind the activities that they were also involved in. The First Amendment does not protect them. You could see actual media organizations, if not facing criminal, possibly they could be facing criminal prosecution, but certainly they'll be huge targets for civil suits by those who they targeted, primarily Carter Page, Papadopoulos, and Trump himself. Anyone in the administration who was targeted in a coordinated effort where the media played a role in the criminal conspiracy. The First Amendment doesn't give you the right as a newspaper or a cable network news show or anything like that to engage in a conspiratorial coup, especially when you know you're actively involved in the plot. That's not covered under the First Amendment. They're about to find that out. Andrew Cuomo has defeated Cynthia Nixon easily in the governor's race. Kind of interesting that after winning that race, then Cuomo comes out and basically lambastes the extreme left wing, the social justice warriors, the Bernie wing, what do you want to call them. He comes out and essentially lambastes them and gets a few digs in at OcasioCortez without actually saying her name. He also makes a reference to the fact that there's no blue wave within the party, and I think what he's referring to is that that the far left wing of the Democratic Party is going to take over. Clearly, Cuomo is a part of the establishment, old school Democratic Party, the corporate Democrats. That's who is backing him. He's a close friend and associate of all the corporate Democrats. So this tells us a couple things, and I agree with Cuomo in the sense that no, the extreme left wing of the base is not going to essentially take over the party because they don't control it. The corporate Democrats control the Democratic Party. But it doesn't mean that these far lefties are not going to make their life miserable. They're going to win some seats. Now, they've been getting defeated in most of the races, but they have won a couple, and they are going to continue to be a thorn in the side of the corporate Democratic Party throughout 2018, 2020, and beyond. I don't think that they're going away. I think that they'll continue to probably grow in number to some extent. The only choice they have is a third party or something like that. I don't think the Green Party interests them at all. I don't think the Green Party is interested in them. So I think that their strategy to take over the corporate Democratic Party is going to be what they're going to be working on for some time to come. Unless they start their own party, which, as they understand, will go nowhere. It's just too small of a group of people. It's a very small number of people who would sign on to that radical of a left-wing commie agenda. But it doesn't mean that it's not a problem for the corporate Democrats. They're going to have to deal with it, and they never have. Because what they have needed over the past year or so, as they look at the midterms, they look and see that the far left-wing commies are the energy in their party. The other part of their party, the centrist wing or the normal Democrats, are joining the walk-away movement, or they're just not all that excited about what they see in the Democratic Party. So the Democrats are in a tough position. In order to accomplish what they want, which is to win in the midterms, specifically in the House, they feel that they need to get voter turnout, and they feel that that is going to be done mostly by appealing to the far left wing of their base. But if they do motivate those people to come out and vote, and they did take back the House, as soon as they do, they're going to diss all those far left wingers and say, thanks a lot for helping us win the midterms, now go sit in the corner. and that's what they're going to do. And a lot of these people on the far left probably know that, but I'm sure that they will be radicalized and motivated to come out and vote, and that will be a factor. That's why I say in all these videos, as a lot of other people say in the comments section, it's about getting out and voting. It's about a turnout in a midterm election. Turnout in the midterm election is huge because you have a lot less turnout. So if one party, one side or the other, has a bigger turnout, it has an amplified effect. And the people who we really need to be focused on here is, of course, you need to know what your situation is in your voting district. You see, where I live in District 8 in Butler County, Ohio, it's 95% Republicans. The Democrats are not going to win anything. They don't even run candidates here. So I'm going to go out and vote, but it's just icing on the cake. I mean, Republicans are going to hold this district. It's not even close. It's not even, I don't even know if there's even a Democrat running in District 8. And then there's going to be races in certain places which are going to be, lock, stock, and barrel. Democrat's going to win. Doesn't matter. You can throw a Republican in there. He can give it his best shot, but he's most likely going to lose. It's just overwhelmingly a left-wing district. So those are those two scenarios there. But the people who really have to come out and make sure on the Republican side that they come out and vote in big numbers are those people living in districts regarding the Congress, those people who live in districts where there is a reasonably close race, meaning within 15, 20 points. Here where I live, it's 85%, 85, 90%. There's no chance of a Democrat winning. But if you live in a district where, the Republicans up by 5 points or maybe down by 15, you don't look and go, oh, well, we're down by 15. I'm not going to bother. We're probably going to lose. You can't do that. You are the very people that have to come out and vote. You people who are in districts that are open, districts that there's at least a fighting chance that we win, you have to get out and vote. Those are the people who are going to decide whether we hold on to the House or not. And it is absolutely imperative. If you live in a district where you have a race, and you do, because everybody has a race for the House, it's every 2 years. So if you live in a district where you have, a race that's within 20 points, you have to get out and vote. You have to get out and vote. Absolutely critical. Project Veritas. James O'Keefe is teasing about a new undercover investigation that will be revealed next week. That would be this upcoming week. And it has something to do with high-ranking government officials explaining how they undercut President Trump from within. That should be pretty interesting and fairly damaging to the deep state. So we'll be looking for James O'Keefe and the newest Project Veritas released next week. I'll certainly be covering that, I'm sure. Be very interested. Obviously, what he does, he gets people, a lot of the time they don't know they're being recorded. Sometimes they do. So we'll find out if these are people who knew they were being recorded or not. But apparently it's going to have something to do with people talking about how they try to undercut Trump from within. Should be very interesting. We'll certainly be following that. Well, it appears that Diane Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein, appears that her little plot against Judge Kavanaugh has been an epic fail. Epic fail. It was ridiculous anyway. A 40-year-old accusation from when he was in high school. Fortunately, there's been 65 other women who knew him in high school who've signed a letter saying that that's not the Judge Kavanaugh they knew. Now everyone knows that this is bullshit, but this is exactly the type of thing that Diane Turn In Your Guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein is going to do because she's desperate. And I don't even think it has so much to do with the fact that she thought it would have any impact, because the FBI has already said it's a ridiculous thing and that they're not even going to look into it. The FBI is not even going to look into this letter or anything about this accusation. It happened so long ago. There was no criminal violation. There was no charges filed at the time. No police report made at the time. This person is sitting there throwing Molotov cocktails from out of the shadows, will not even come out and say who they are. The FBI is just not going to waste any time on that. And they got enough problems, don't they? I think this may have had more to do with Feinstein being concerned about the fact that she's in a race right now, and that the person she's running against could very well upset her. She needs some red meat for the base. She needs some red meat for the base. And for those on the far left that don't think she's far left enough, as hard as that is to believe. Trump will get his $5 billion for the wall in his spending bill, which is exactly double what he was looking for. So remember about 2 weeks ago, Trump said, yeah, I'll shut down the government if I don't get my wall funding. And of course, Twitch McConnell and Big Ears Paul Ryan did not want to include that funding in the bill, in the spending bill. And Trump said, okay, well, then I'll just shut down the government. And so obviously enough pressure has been brought to bear on Twitch and Eddie Munster, Big Ears Ryan, that they have finally capitulated. Trump wins again. He's going to get $5 billion for wall spending in this spending bill. And Twitch says they will get it done. Very well done. Once again, Mr. President. Winning. It appears that the bug-eyed fool, Adam Schiff, wants to investigate Trump now for money laundering. I don't think Trump needs to launder money. He's got $10 billion. Probably would be pretty hard for Donald Trump to launder money anyway. He's kind of high profile. Where do you think he laundered money through? Now, there is another issue, Mr. Schiff, about the leaking of classified information, and I think your name's going to come up in that. Don't you know also that Adam Schiff was also in the business of speaking of laundering things, he was part and parcel of the laundering of intelligence. Laundering intelligence. And there's a lot of evidence of that, Mr. Schiff, you bug-eyed fool. We'll be watching. We'll be watching and see how that turns out for you, Mr. Schiff. Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, was giving a speech in Ohio, obviously not anywhere near where I live, but probably up in northern Ohio, up near Cleveland would be my guess, where there's a lot of liberals. He's giving a speech up in Ohio last night, and he says that Republicans are not conservative, that they are radicals. Yes, from the man whose entire presidency and post-presidency and pre-presidency was based on rules for radicals by Mr. Alinsky, which he used and employed and is currently employing today. And he goes one step farther and says that Republicans are worse than deplorable. Well, you know, that deplorable comment worked so well for the rotten Reverend Clinton. Why don't you go ahead and double down on it, Obama, and then say that we're even worse than deplorable? What's going to be deplorable is going to be when you have to get on your hands and knees and beg for Trump not to send you to prison. You're going to love this next line that comes out of this idiot's mouth. So in the process of that speech, he also says the following. Get ready for this one. This is going to make you spit your coffee right here. This is what Obama said. He says, quote, Republicans in Congress who are bending over backward trying to shield and deflect oversight of this behavior from scrutiny and accountability and consequences. Scrutiny, accountability, and consequences. Holy smoke. The chutzpah of this man. No, it's actually the deep state which has been trying to shield and deflect oversight of your behavior, Obama, from the scrutiny and accountability and the consequences which are coming your way. Now, I watched just all I could take of that was about a 30-second clip, but you can clearly see that Obama, he's nervous. He's nervous about something, and why is he throwing this crap out there? He's throwing it out there because he's setting the stage for his defense. And the defense that they're going to run is that Trump is a authoritarian, that he's a tyrant, that he's using his position to try to go after his political enemies after the fact and accuse them of the very crimes that he committed. This is how they're going to try to spin it. It's the Saul Alinsky technique. That's the only thing that Obama knows. I mean, that guides everything he does in his life. And, of course, the rotten Reverend Clinton is also a big fan of Mr. Alinsky as well. It's not going to work. Because ultimately what this is, and what Obama is doing, is it's ultimately just politics. It's just political posturing. But once the Spygate situation makes its way into the courts, where it comes down to witnesses, their testimony, evidence, facts, all this political crap won't matter. All that will matter are the facts and the evidence. And there is where Obama has got a big problem, because the facts and the evidence are going to clearly show that Barack Hussein Obama was directly involved and was one of the primary ringleaders of the coup and all that went along with it. Extreme high crimes that we're talking about here. He was one of the heads of the criminal conspiracy. We just don't really throw former presidents in prison, and it may be the only reason that Obama walks. But he will have to crawl on his hands and knees and beg for a pardon from Trump. For his crimes, his legacy will be completely destroyed. His ability to do anything for the rest of his life will be completely destroyed. He will have to go hide in a corner. That's what he'll have to do. Yeah, there'll be some left-wingers that will praise him still and love him still and still buy the bullshit. But the overwhelming majority of people will know exactly what he was a part of. And for the history books and for the record, for the court record, it will be very well known what he did. So his little political speeches are not going to work. He's not even drawing that many people. He's a fraud, and many Democrats know it. He looks mighty nervous. He's a very frightened man, and he very well should be. He very well should be. Of course, Lindsey Graham is now calling out Sessions again, the second time this week that Lindsey Graham has made comments. Earlier in the week, he was calling out Sessions for the fact that he hasn't relaunched a real investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails and her mishandling of classified information, violations of the Espionage Act, her obstruction of justice. So he's saying Sessions needs to get off his ass and appoint and launch a real investigation into the crimes of the rotten Reverend Clinton. But he's taking it another step this week, saying he's going to write a letter to Sessions telling him to stop stonewalling and do something, to appoint a special counsel to look into the DOJ and FBI and their corruption and what they did. He also said that there is no secret investigation. He's saying that Sessions doesn't have any secret investigation going on. That's what Lindsey Graham is saying. And then he needs to actually do something. So I'm not sure why Lindsey Graham in the past few months has all of a sudden cozied up to Trump. I know a lot of it's purely political, I'm sure. You know, Trump's done a lot of things that's made Lindsey Graham look very good. You know, Lindsey Graham comes from a state where you have a lot of military, you have a lot of defense contractors, and Trump's position on foreign policy, or all those things have made Lindsey Graham very, very happy with Trump. And we know they've been getting together on the golf course a lot, and they're maybe patching up their relationship a little bit. Not because they really like each other, but because they both understand that they have a mutual benefit if they can somehow let go of the past bad feelings and move forward. They both have a personal vested interest in working that situation out. And again, I don't think it's that they particularly like each other. It's that they both have a shared common interest and realize it's in both their interest to get along. They've probably had that conversation. They probably looked at each other and said, I don't like you and you don't like me, and we both understand that. But it's in both of our interest to do this, 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 and this. So Lindsey Graham is an unlikely character to be coming on board, pushing for these investigations, going after Sessions and all the other things, especially because he was Senator Magoo's best friend. But I think he has his own personal motivations, and I think that that's being obvious right here. But regardless of what his motivations are, he is sending a letter to Sessions. He wants a special counsel to look into the DOJ and the FBI stuff, and he is saying that Sessions doesn't have any secret investigation going on, despite what many people believe. That's Lindsey Graham. At this time, we have about 5 reported deaths from Hurricane Florence. Fortunately, when it came to shore, it was downgraded to a 2. Now, later this morning, it became a 1. Or would it be Friday morning, became a 1. It doesn't appear it's going to be that damaging, but there's still going to be a lot of damage along the coastline, a lot of people's homes being destroyed. Unfortunately, there will be some more deaths, I'm sure, but it could have been much, much worse. So, thankfully, for those of you who live in that area, hopefully it's not as bad as it could have been. It's very good for all of you, and I'm happy to hear it. Happy to report on it. I'm sure Patty wants to get back home, do some more fishing, grilling up those, having some more of them fish fries, and get back to life as normal. And hopefully Maura, we haven't heard from Maura. My guess is she got family in New Jersey. Maybe she went back to New Jersey or something like that. But hopefully we'll hear from Maura soon and make sure that she's okay. We have in some election type news, and we're going to be getting into the election stuff here in about usually when we get about 2 to 3 weeks out, when we can really start looking at some things, seeing where these races are going. Right now, it's still pretty fluid. Things will begin to tighten up here in the next. When you get 2 to 3 weeks out, that's when you start to see people who are undecided making decisions. We'll get to see how some of these races may turn out. We know there's going to be a lot of political shenanigans. There could be vote rigging. There will be vote rigging, election rigging. There will be a lot of fake polls, weaponized polls. Be a lot of things we have to cut through. But I'll do my best to try to cut through it, and we'll be getting into that here in a couple of weeks. But just as an early note of a particular important race that a lot of people are watching, it's kind of a important race to watch, is sort of a measure for how things might go across the country. A lot of people watching this race in Virginia, West Virginia, with Joe Manchin, who had a huge lead, has held a huge lead, but that race now is down to single digits. He still has a lead over Patrick Morrisey, but he was thought to be a shoo-in for re-election just a couple weeks ago, and now it's not so sure. So a lot of people watching that Joe Manchin race with Patrick Morrisey, now in single digits. And of course, I promised my good friend Patrick Patton, one of my favorite subs, who's over in Vietnam, I promised him I would keep an eye on his state, and now I've kind of forgot whether it's New Hampshire or Vermont. So Patrick, let me know in your comments section, and I'll write it down next time, whether it's Vermont or New Hampshire. I think it's Vermont or New Hampshire is where you're from. Okay, I know you're living in Vietnam now, but you're interested in knowing what's going on in the race from the state that you're from. And I can't remember if it's New Hampshire or Vermont, but let me know in the comment section. I'll make sure to pay attention. But if it is New Hampshire, what you have going on there is you have the Democrat who won that primary is Molly Kelly. She'll be going up against the incumbent Republican, which is Chris Sununu. So that's what's going on in New Hampshire. That's the major race going on there. Of course, there's House races and Senate races. A lot of House races. Of course, the Senate races, we'll look into that as well when we get there. But if you're from Vermont, of course, that's, of course, Bernie Sanders and Leahy are the senators there. Bernie, of course, and Leahy is not up for re-election. Bernie, I believe, is. He'll probably hold that Senate seat very easily. But he will be running against this Republican, which is Larry Zupan. Now, actually, the guy who won that race was H. Brooke Page. But Mr. Page, after winning the primary, the Republican primary, pulled out. He won the race and then backed out. So then the number 2 person of the 5-man field stepped in and was given that position by the Republican Party, and that would be Larry Zupan, who only lost to Page by about 2 points. So it was a pretty close race. But now it looks like Page is backed out after winning by 2 points. The guy who came in second, Larry Zupan, is now going to be the person running in that for that Senate race against Commie Bernie. So this past week, the big story this past week, I think, and of course still the big story is whether or not Trump's going to release these the 20 pages from the Carter Page FISA, whether or not he's going to release the Bruce Orr and the Gang of Eight stuff. So we're still waiting to see. A lot of people are speculating that will be next week when that's going to happen, but there's also people saying that the legal people within the White House are still advising Trump against it. So, we're not sure what's going on there, what kind of conflict may be happening. But one of the biggest things, of course, going on this week was all those new releases of Strzok and Page texts. And the thing about that is that it was just more icing on the cake, or more evidence to prove what we already know. But what's, I think, noteworthy about it is that none of that stuff had anything to do with sources and methods or classified information. It was just things that were very damaging to the deep state, to the DOJ and to the FBI. And that's why they hadn't released it. Remember, that stuff was subpoenaed, a year and a half ago. There was about 50,000 pages of Strzok Page texts. They've gotten about 1,000 pages. So there's 49,000 more pages that are still out there that haven't been released. So what you can see is the DOJ and FBI, mainly Rodenstein behind this, is very, very much trying to slow walk all this stuff so that they just leak out little bits and little bits at a time, hoping that people are desensitized to the revelations, hoping that if you just spoon feed it to them, that after a while they'll just say, oh, more Page Strzok test, oh, who cares? It's been going on for a long time, who cares? And that's when the real damaging stuff will come out at the end. And this is why we do have to have a special counsel, presidential commission, or something. It all needs to come out now. It needs to be put together as a real legal case so we can move on it. The slow drip method is not going to get it done. So I hope that that will improve. We'll keep watching it and see how that situation plays itself out. I think it has a lot to do with how things go in the midterms. Got to get out and vote. Got to. Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See ya. Bye.